Okay, welcome to the course overview now for Lead the Business for experienced leaders at Milwaukee Tool. Looking forward to seeing you at the upcoming class. This is going to be a virtual course, but let me just forewarn you that this is going to be a highly interactive virtual course, not your typical kind of sit back passive course. We're going to have time together in a larger conference call to share information, answer questions, deliver the lectures, have the discussions, but then you're going to break off into some team decision-making rooms where you and your teammates are going to have to run an actual manufacturing firm in competition with one another. This class is on business acumen, it's on financial acumen, and it makes use of a business simulation to drive home those points. It's a great learning laboratory. We're looking forward to having you there. Process is pretty simple. You've been broken up into management teams. I think we've got 5 teams, but check me on that. Each team is running a different company. So you've got different companies with different strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We're going to go through a number of rounds of decision. I think at least 4, maybe 5. Check the agenda on the learning portal to see how many rounds of competition there are. After every round of competition, we'll have more lecture, more discussion to take you to the next level of thinking regarding the business and the next level of competition. Every decision round, we call it a decision period, represents 1 year of elapsed time. And at the end of every round, we will review the results and we'll give you tips and tricks on how to improve your performance. Let me start first by just talking about business in general. Running a business is a difficult task because businesses are multidimensional. Employees, customers, finance, operations, regulators, et cetera, et cetera. You need to, as a leader, you need to learn how to coordinate and align all those things and provide focus for all those items in order to make a difference in the marketplace, and in order to appeal to customers, and in order to generate revenues and have extra money left over to invest in future improvements. Running a business for a long term is difficult, though. Small businesses struggle with it and large businesses struggle with it. If you're a small company, the average age of, or 50% of small companies fail by year 5. 70% will fail by year 10. If you're a larger organization, don't take comfort in your size. The average age of the typical S&P 500 company is now under 20 years, and it used to be at about 60 years in the 1950s. So sustainable competitive advantage is becoming more and more elusive, and I'll say a few more words about that. If you want to run a good organization for a long period of time, it requires good business acumen, which is what this class is about. Business savvy, business sense, it's a keenness, a quickness, and understanding a situation, and then making decisions that take and lead you to a better outcome. That's Wikipedia's definition of business acumen, and I'll stand by that. Peter Drucker, you'll hear him a few times during this class, known as the father of corporate strategy, the grandfather of management theory, was a lecturer, was a consultant, has a great quote. The quote goes, "Only 3 things happen naturally in organizations." And this is large organizations or small organizations. 3 things happen naturally: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Your job as a leader within a business, large or small, your job as a leader within your office or within your branch is to make your business, your organization, behave unnaturally. You're there to reduce the friction, overcome the confusion, and to drive outstanding performance. That's really the role of a leader in a business. There's an economist called Thomas Friedman. 2015, he wrote a book called Thank You for Being Late. In Thank You for Being Late, Thomas Friedman talks about change that's occurring in the world and the acceleration of change that's occurring in the world, and how change and acceleration of change is having an impact on society and on businesses and on individuals. In the story, or in the book, Thank You for Being Late, Mr. Friedman tells a story about a king that is so happy with the inventor of the game of chess that the king offers the inventor any reward that the inventor would like to have. And so the inventor says, "Well, king, I'd like to have enough food to feed my family." The king says, "How much food is that?" The inventor thinks about it and says, "Well, king, if you could take the chessboard that I just invented, if you could put 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, if you could then add double that amount of rice on the second square, and then double it again on the third square through all 64 squares of the chessboard, that's what I'd like. So 1 grain of rice on number 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. If you did that, how many grains of rice would there be up in the upper left-hand corner on the 64th square of that chessboard?" Got your number? How many people had 9.2 quintillion? All right, 9.2 quintillion just on that square. Quintillion is a number followed by 18 zeros. The entire chessboard has 18 quintillion grains of rice. What is that process known as when you go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8? All right, it's known as exponential growth. Where have you heard about exponential growth? Well, if you're paying attention, you hear about it with coronavirus and pandemics. But if you've also heard about it before coronavirus, you may have heard about it when we talk about computers, and we talk about computer processing power, and we talk about the ability of computers to store data. Back in the 1960s, Robert Moore came up with what is known as Moore's Law. What Moore's Law said, and it starts back in the 1960s, is that computers would have exponential growth in terms of their processing power and in terms of their ability to store data. All right? Well, when you have exponential growth with grains of rice, you create a mess. When you have exponential growth with something like processing power and the ability to store data, you all of a sudden have strange things starting to occur. You have strange things like driverless cars. You have strange things like these devices, a smartphone that has millions of times more processing power on it than NASA had in total when they put a man on the moon back in the late 1960s. Strange things like a social media platform that can interconnect 3 to 4 billion people instantaneously worldwide. All right? Strange things are starting to occur. As a leader of an organization in the year 2020 and beyond, you're going to have to deal with strange things occurring more and more frequently. Go back to Drucker's quote, organizations behaving naturally, friction, confusion, underperformance. That was true 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, probably when it was first said. Think of the confusion, the friction, and the underperformance that are going to be in your world of leadership, in your environment of leadership, with all the strange things that are occurring and with all the change that's occurring. If you've heard of the term VUCA, VUCA is simply what we're talking about. It's the concept, it's the fact that our environments are becoming much more volatile, much more uncertain, much more complex, and much more ambiguous. And the leadership practices that made successful leaders in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and even in the 2010s, those best practices of leadership, some are still going to apply, but now we're going to have to start to develop VUCA approaches to leadership. And managing and leading in a VUCA world is going to be different than managing and leading in a world that perhaps is not undergoing quite as much change as you're going to see as a leader in your organization. And then here's a nice chart, not nice for everybody, but if companies behave naturally, if leadership fails, this is the typical trajectory. This was a study done of 700 businesses. At the beginning of the study, they took the top 50% of the businesses, or about 350 businesses, as measured on profitability, return on investment, something like return on assets, return on equity. We plotted the best performing companies together as a group over 10 years. We plotted the worst performing companies as a group on the red line over 10 years, and we then compared them at the end of 10 years. And what this data suggests is that the likelihood that if you're running a great company in 2020, that you'll still have a great company in 2030, it doesn't happen on average. On average, the best organizations decline in performance. On average, the worst organizations improve in performance over time, or they go bust altogether. And at the end of 10 years, you're going to have a whole new set of leaders and laggards. All right. So the simulation. Simulation will be the primary vehicle through which we're going to communicate and talk and drive discussions around business and financial acumen. I know you've read the case study guide. Let me just highlight some of the most important things for you from the case study guide. But again, we will come back to the simulation over and over. You're going to be running a manufacturing firm. You're going to be in a marketplace that exhibits normal market behaviors. We're not going to throw too many curveballs at you because you've got 4 or 5 other firms that are going to throw curveballs at you with the decisions that they're making. So we don't need to throw curveballs. We don't need to inject any additional uncertainty because your competitors will do that naturally. Demand is sensitive to the gross domestic product, interest rates, the decisions that are being made. So just watch what's going on with the economy. See if there's a recession being forecast, or see if there's some kind of a boom being forecasted so that you can take advantage of that. Industry specifics, the customer segments, this is the flesh and blood. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Value seekers are the ones. We use the number 1 in the simulation because it doesn't take up as much screen real estate, so you can get more data on a screen. So whenever you're in a simulation and you see them talking about customer segment number 1, that refers to the value seekers, families, singles, high-income enterprisers. You can pay attention to the qualitative descriptions here, but what's more important really is what are their wants and needs in terms of the purchases that they're making on the products that they're buying. That data is available in the simulation, but this is the 5 types of customers, flesh and blood, that are purchasing the vehicles that you're manufacturing. Then we have product classes. This is the metal and rubber, economy class cars, family class cars, luxury class cars. At the intersection of a customer segment and with a product class, we end up with what we're going to call the microsegments. So if you see here, this is a 1E microsegment. The 1 stands for the value-seeking customer. The E stands for the class of vehicle, the economy class. If I look at this list of current microsegments, and I'm not going to guarantee all these are actually active in your simulation, so you're going to have to pay attention. If I look at the current list of microsegments on this particular chart, I can see that the value-seeking customers at the bottom also are looking to buy a truck. But I don't see any value-seeking customers looking to buy a luxury vehicle. That wouldn't really make sense. All right? So pay attention to the intersection of the class of vehicle and the type of customer, because those are truly the microsegments that are spending the money to purchase the vehicles. Don't be surprised if consumers buy cars outside their preferred class. You may actually find, let's say that no one is currently manufacturing a minivan. Well, what is the poor family customer, twos, the 2Ms that are looking to buy a minivan class vehicle, what are they supposed to do to get to work? Well, they're going to have to buy a vehicle. Are they going to be really happy with what they got to purchase? No, but they got to buy a vehicle. So you may actually look at a report and say, hey, I've got a vehicle I'm trying to sell. It's a utility vehicle that's targeted for enterprisers, but I got a bunch of 2Ms purchasing that vehicle. You may ask why. Well, it's because either no one's manufacturing a vehicle for the 2Ms, or it got stocked out, or it's a crappy 2M. So don't be surprised if that occurs, but typically that's going to be indicative of an opportunity for you to perhaps go capture. And then there is market research that talks about new customer segments, new microsegments that might emerge if you design a vehicle for that microsegment. So you can see here there's a classic car called the AEV. These are electric cars. So you might look at a report that says, hey, we predict, market research is telling us that there might be a 5A customer that would emerge if you actually developed an alternative energy vehicle for the enterprise or customers. That's great, but that's just market research. So high risk, high reward. Don't assume that just because you launch a vehicle for a 5A customer, don't assume that that vehicle is actually, or that those customers are actually going to purchase that vehicle. So high risk, high reward. It's an opportunity, but it's not a certainty. That's my warning. I believe this is currently the lay of the land for the 5 firms. Firm A, B, C, D, and E. Those are the 5 competitors, and here are the vehicles that they are currently manufacturing. So you're all starting off in different positions with different strengths and weaknesses and different kind of strategies underway that you're going to have to try to infer in terms of the decisions that you make and the new product launches or adjustments that you want to make. So pay attention to that. This obviously is not fixed in stone. You all currently have 3 vehicles. At the end of the competition, you could all have 3 vehicles. You could have 1 vehicle. You could have 10 vehicles. It's up to your strategy, your decision making to dictate what this map would look like at the end of the competition. Then one more thing real quick. We can't drive physical vehicles into a classroom or into a virtual workshop. So when we talk about a vehicle, you're talking about that vehicle and describing that vehicle using these attributes. First is the class, economy class, truck, minivan. Next is size, anywhere from 1 to 150. Larger means that it's bigger, right? Some customers want large vehicles, other customers want small vehicles. That's what the size attributes is. Engines is expressed in horsepower. You've got things called interior styling, safety, and quality, also sometimes referred to as ISSQ. This is a 1 to about 15 scale, with the higher number indicating that you've got better interior or better styling or better quality. Some customers care about quality. Other customers don't really care about quality, but they really care about safety. So make sure that you're aligning the customer wants and needs with the vehicles that you're producing. And then finally, there's the price of the vehicle itself. So that's how we describe the vehicles. Your next video is going to be a quick demonstration of the simulation itself. And this is the navigation menu for the simulation. And you can see here there's different sections in the navigation menu that you can click on in order to make decisions, take a look at the marketplace, or analyze the competition. But I'll save that to the next vehicle. Really looking forward to having you at the class. Get ready for a great competition and a great learning event. See you soon.